The bedroom clock read 2:17 a.m. when I heard the suitcase zipper. I kept my eyes closed, listening to Zoya moving around our room with the careful precision of someone trying not to wake a sleeping spouse. After 10 years of marriage, I knew every sound she made. This wasn't her usual restless night routine. "Hayes?" Her voice cut through the darkness. "I know you're awake." I opened my eyes and sat up. Zoya stood by the dresser, her silhouette backlit by the hallway light. She'd already changed out of her pajamas into jeans and that expensive sweater her mother bought her last Christmas. The suitcase on the bed was half packed with her clothes folded in neat stacks. "Going somewhere?" I asked, keeping my voice level. She turned to face me, and I could see the determination in her posture. Zoya had always been beautiful in that sharp, angular way that photographed well for her social media empire. Right now, she looked like a stranger. "I'm going back to Derek," she said. "I'm taking half of everything. Don't make this ugly." The words hung in the air between us. Derek Lang, her college boyfriend who'd resurfaced 6 months ago when he moved back to town for some finance job. I'd met him twice at Zoya's networking events, slick hair, expensive suits, and the kind of confident handshake that lasted too long. "Could you repeat that?" I asked, reaching for my phone on the nightstand. "What?" "What you just said. Repeat it." Zoya's eyes narrowed, but her voice stayed steady. "I'm going back to Derek. I'm taking half of everything. Don't make this ugly." I smiled and tapped the screen to stop recording. "Thanks. You're recording me?" "Security camera in the hallway picked it up anyway," I said, nodding toward the door. "But I wanted a clean audio file." She stared at me for a long moment, probably expecting anger or pleading. Instead, I lay back down and pulled the covers up to my chin. "Have a good night, Zoya." I listened to her finish packing, her movements now hurried and agitated. The front door slammed at 2:43 a.m. Her BMW pulled out of the driveway with more acceleration than necessary, tires squealing slightly on the wet pavement. Then I got up and went to my office. My basement workspace had always been my sanctuary. 3 monitors, a server rack humming quietly in the corner, and walls lined with technical manuals and project documentation. I'd built my consulting business from this room, designing systems and managing digital infrastructure for small companies across the region. I opened the security camera app and saved the hallway footage from 2:15 to 2:45 a.m. Clear video, perfect audio. Zoya's declaration of intent to abandon the marriage and claim half our assets, recorded in high definition. Next, I pulled up our prenuptial agreement from the encrypted drive. 23 pages of legal language that Zoya had signed without reading, trusting her lawyer's assurance that it was standard protection for both parties. Page 18 contained the clause I'd insisted on. Any attempt to dissolve the marriage for the purpose of pursuing a relationship with a previous romantic partner would constitute abandonment and forfeit all claims to marital assets acquired through the other party's professional work. Page 19 listed my intellectual property schedule. Every software license, every consulting contract, every digital platform that Zoya used to run her influencer business, all registered under my name, all revocable upon marital breach. I'd learned early in our marriage that Zoya's creative entrepreneurship was built entirely on systems I designed and maintained. Her lifestyle blog, her social media management tools, her e-commerce platform for selling sponsored products. She provided the content and the pretty face for photos. I provided everything else. At 4 a.m., I started drafting the revocation notices. The first email went to Platform Solutions, the company that hosted Zoya's main website. I attached the license termination notice and requested immediate suspension of administrative privileges for all accounts except my own. The second went to Social Media Dynamics, the service that managed Zoya's posting schedules across 6 different platforms. Same process. License revoked, access suspended. By dawn, I'd sent 12 emails to various service providers, hosting companies, and platform managers. Each one included the same legal language, the same license termination, and the same request for immediate action. I didn't argue. I didn't call her. I didn't send angry text messages or demand explanations. I just filed the paperwork and waited. Zoya's Instagram post went live at 9:23 a.m. A carefully staged photo of her sitting in what looked like Derek's apartment, coffee mug in hand, morning light streaming through expensive blinds. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to choose happiness over comfort. New chapter starting today. Thank you for understanding." Within minutes, the comments started flowing. Her followers, mostly other lifestyle bloggers and local influencers, offered support and asked questions. Zoya had cultivated this audience carefully over 5 years, building it into a modest but profitable platform that generated enough sponsorship income to fund her shopping habits. I waited until the post had 50 comments before I replied. Here's the full context, I wrote and attached 2 files. The first was the audio clip from 2:17 a.m., Zoya's voice clear and unmistakable. The second was a screenshot of page 18 from our prenuptial agreement, with the relevant clause highlighted in yellow. No explanation, no commentary. Just the facts. Then I went upstairs to make breakfast. My phone started ringing at 10:15 a.m. Zoya's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. She called again immediately. Voicemail again. The third time, I answered. "Hayes, what the hell do you think you're doing?" "Having coffee," I said. "How's Derek's place?" "Take that post down right now." "Which post?" "You know exactly which post. Take it down and we can discuss this like adults." I opened my laptop and checked the service provider responses. Platform Solutions had already suspended her admin access. Social Media Dynamics had terminated her scheduling privileges. Her website was still live, but she could no longer update it or access the back-end systems. "I'm not sure what you want me to take down," I said. "I just shared some audio and a legal document. Public information." "Hayes, I'm serious. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." "You said not to make it ugly. I'm not making it anything. I'm just letting people know what happened." The line went quiet for several seconds. In the background, I could hear Derek's voice, though I couldn't make out the words. "We need to talk," Zoya said finally. "We talked at 2:17 this morning. You were very clear about your intentions." "I meant we need to discuss the practical details. Asset division, timeline, all of that." "Sure," I said. "Have your lawyer call my lawyer. I'll send you his contact information." I hung up and sent her a text with the name and number of the attorney who drafted our prenup. Then I turned off my phone and went to the gym. When I got back 2 hours later, I had 17 missed calls from Zoya and 3 voicemails from a number I didn't recognize. The voicemails were from Derek, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Hayes, this is Derek Lang. We need to have a conversation about how you're handling this situation. Zoya deserves better than these juvenile games. Call me back." I deleted the voicemails without listening to the other 2. My email inbox told a different story. Platform Solutions had completed the access suspension. Zoya's website now displayed a maintenance message. Social Media Dynamics had terminated all scheduled posts. Her Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter accounts were still active, but she'd lost the automated tools that let her manage them efficiently. More importantly, I'd received 3 emails from companies that sponsored Zoya's content, all asking for clarification about the recent developments and requesting confirmation that their contracts were still valid. I forwarded those emails to Zoya without comment. My phone rang again at 3 p.m. This time, the caller ID showed Mrs. Petrov, Zoya's mother. "Hayes, what is this nonsense I'm hearing? Zoya called me crying about websites and lawyers, and I don't understand any of it." Elena Petrov had never liked me. In her mind, Zoya had married beneath her station, settling for a computer person instead of finding a proper professional like a doctor or lawyer. She'd made this opinion clear at every family gathering for the past decade. "Hello, Elena. How are you?" "Don't you hello Elena me. What have you done to my daughter?" "I haven't done anything to your daughter. Your daughter made some choices last night, and now she's experiencing the consequences of those choices. You can't just take away her business. We'll sue you for everything you have." I put the phone on speaker and opened my email. While Elena continued her tirade, I composed a new message and attached the license termination notices, the prenup clause, and the legal documentation showing my ownership of all the systems Zoya had been using. "Elena, I'm sending you some documents that explain the situation. You might want to show them to a lawyer before you make any threats about lawsuits." I hit send and hung up. By evening, the social media storm was in full swing. Zoya's original post had been shared dozens of times, but now the conversation had shifted. People were discussing the prenup clause, debating whether my response was justified, and speculating about the details of her relationship with Derek. Zoya posted twice more, trying to control the narrative. First, a longer explanation about growing apart and choosing happiness. Then, a more defensive post about vindictive behavior and trying to destroy someone's livelihood. Each post received fewer likes and more critical comments than the last. I didn't respond to any of it. I just watched the numbers drop as her engagement rates plummeted and her follower count began to decline. The next morning, I received an email from her biggest sponsor, a local boutique that paid her to feature their clothes in her posts. They were terminating her contract, effective immediately, citing reputational concerns and brand alignment issues. I forwarded that email to Zoya too. Then I poured another cup of coffee and started planning my next move. Derek called me directly on Wednesday morning. I was in my office, monitoring the cascading failures across Zoya's digital empire, when my phone buzzed with his number. Hayes, we need to talk like civilized people. Good morning, Derek. How's the finance business? Listen, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Zoya never meant to hurt you. She just wants to be happy. I leaned back in my chair and opened a new browser window. Derek worked for Pinnacle Investment Group, according to his LinkedIn profile. Senior Portfolio Manager. Nice title. I'm sure she does want to be happy, I said. That's why she's free to pursue happiness wherever she wants. Without my technical infrastructure supporting her business? That's vindictive, Hayes. You're destroying her livelihood out of spite. I'm protecting my intellectual property, Derek. Very different thing. Look, maybe we can work something out. Some kind of transition period where she can migrate her platforms to new systems, give her time to rebuild. I pulled up Pinnacle Investment Group's website and found their client complaint portal. Interesting that they emphasized ethical conduct and professional integrity in their mission statement. That's a generous offer, Derek, but I don't think so. See, the thing about licensing agreements is that they're pretty clear about termination conditions. Zoya triggered those conditions when she abandoned our marriage to pursue a relationship with you. She didn't abandon anything. People grow apart. Marriages end, that's life. People do grow apart, I agreed. But Zoya specifically said she was going back to you and taking half of everything. That's not growing apart. That's calculated abandonment with financial motivation. Derek's voice got tighter. You recorded a private conversation. I recorded someone making threats about my assets in my own home. Perfectly legal. I started typing an email while we talked. The subject line read, Concern about employee conduct, Derek Lang. Hayes, be reasonable. Zoya built that following herself. Those are her relationships with her audience. Zoya created content, I said. I built the systems that delivered that content, managed the scheduling, handled the e-commerce integration, and maintained the technical infrastructure. Without my systems, her content is just photos on her phone. You're being petty. I'm being precise. I attached the audio clip of Zoya's midnight declaration to my email and added a brief explanation about Derek's involvement in the situation. Then I sent it to Pinnacle Investment Group's Human Resources Department. Derek, I need to go. I have actual work to do. Enjoy your day. I hung up and checked Zoya's social media accounts. Her posting frequency had dropped dramatically. Without the automated scheduling tools, she was back to manual posting, and the effort was showing. Her last Instagram story had been posted at an odd time with a typo in the caption. Amateur hour. More importantly, her engagement numbers were collapsing. The algorithm punished inconsistent posting, and her reach was shrinking daily. The sponsors who hadn't already jumped ship were asking questions about her declining metrics. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoya. We need to meet. This has gone far enough. I replied, Have your lawyer contact my lawyer. She responded immediately. I can't afford a lawyer if you destroy my income. Should have thought of that at 2:17 a.m. on Monday. I put the phone aside and focused on my legitimate work. I had 3 consulting contracts that needed attention, and my clients were paying good money for systems that actually functioned properly. Around noon, my friend Ivan called. He owned a small security company and occasionally helped me with physical installations when clients needed cameras or network hardware mounted in awkward locations. Hayes, buddy, I'm hearing some interesting gossip around town. Something about Zoya and that finance guy. Word travels fast. Small town, man. Plus, Tina's been running her mouth at the coffee shop. Tina Rodriguez was Zoya's best friend and biggest enabler. They'd met at some networking event 3 years ago and had been inseparable ever since. Tina ran a small marketing consultancy and had always encouraged Zoya's more ambitious schemes. What's Tina saying? Oh, the usual. How you're being unreasonable, how Zoya deserves better, how Derek's a real catch with his fancy job. You know how she talks. I did know how Tina talked. I also knew that she'd been jealous of Zoya's success for years, despite pretending to be supportive. I'd seen her comments on other people's posts, the subtle digs disguised as compliments. Ivan, you still have contacts at Pinnacle Investment, right? From when you did their security upgrade? Yeah, why? Just curious about their workplace policies. Professional conduct, that sort of thing. Ivan chuckled. I'll make some calls. That evening, Zoya showed up at the house. I saw her BMW pull into the driveway through the security camera feed and met her at the front door before she could use her key. We need to talk, she said. We've talked. You made your position clear. Hayes, please, can I at least come inside? This is still my house, too. I looked at her standing on the porch, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. She looked tired, and her usually perfect makeup couldn't quite hide the stress lines around her eyes. Actually, it's not, I said. The house is in my name. The mortgage is in my name. According to the prenup you signed, abandoning the marriage forfeits any claim to real property acquired before or during the marriage. You can't just lock me out of my own home. I can, and I did. I changed the locks yesterday. Her composure cracked slightly. Where am I supposed to get my things? Make a list. I'll pack them up and have Ivan deliver them wherever you're staying. This is insane, Hayes. We were married for 10 years. That has to count for something. It counted for something until you decided it didn't. I started to close the door, but she put her hand against it. What do you want? What will it take to end this reasonably? I want you to experience the consequences of your choices, I said. You wanted Derek and half of everything. You can have Derek. You can't have half of everything. I built that business too. You posed for photos and wrote captions. I built everything else. I closed the door and locked it. Through the security camera, I watched her stand on the porch for several minutes before finally walking back to her car. My phone rang 5 minutes later. Elena Petrov again. Hayes, this is ridiculous. You cannot lock my daughter out of her home. Elena, I sent you the legal documents. Did you show them to a lawyer? Lawyers are expensive. So is losing a lawsuit. You're being cruel. I'm being legal. I hung up and went back to my office. Tomorrow, I had a meeting with a new client who wanted to upgrade their entire digital infrastructure. Real work for real money. Unlike some people, I actually earned my income. Thursday brought news that Derek's situation at Pinnacle Investment had become complicated. Ivan called me around 10 a.m. with an update from his contact in their IT department. Your boy Derek got called into HR yesterday, Ivan said. Apparently someone sent them audio of him discussing personal business during work hours, plus some concerns about his judgment in personal relationships. Interesting. Gets better. Turns out Derek's been using company resources to help Zoya with her business stuff, sending emails from his work account, using their conference rooms for her photo shoots, that kind of thing. I wasn't surprised. Derek struck me as the type who assumed rules didn't apply to him. What's the company's position? They're not happy. Pinnacle's got strict policies about outside business activities and personal conduct. Derek's on thin ice. That afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. Tina showed up at my front door around 3 p.m., her usual confident demeanor replaced by something more cautious. Hayes, can we talk? About what? About Zoya, about this whole situation. I considered closing the door, but curiosity won. You have 5 minutes. She followed me into the living room, but remained standing when I sat down. Look, I know you're angry, but you're destroying her life over a relationship that might not even work out. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just not supporting it anymore. You know what I mean? The website, the social media tools, all of that. She needs those things. She needed those things when she was my wife. Now she's Derek's problem. Tina shifted uncomfortably. What if she came back? What if she realized she made a mistake? She's welcome to come back anytime. Derek can come too if he wants. They just won't have access to my systems or my house. That's not what I meant. I know exactly what you meant, Tina. And the answer is no. She tried a different approach. This isn't just hurting Zoya. It's hurting her whole network. People who depend on her for referrals and collaborations. People like you? Her face flushed slightly. I'm not talking about myself. Of course not. I stood up. Your 5 minutes are up. As she walked to the door, Tina turned back. You know, Zoya always said you were controlling. I defended you, but maybe she was right. Funny thing about control, Tina. When someone has it, they don't usually give it up voluntarily. Zoya tried to take half of everything I built. That's not leaving a controlling relationship. That's attempted theft. After Tina left, I checked my email and found a message from Derek's company. Pinnacle Investment Group was conducting an internal review of employee conduct policies and requested any additional documentation I might have regarding Derek's involvement in external business activities. I sent them everything, the audio recordings, the timeline of events, and a detailed explanation of how Derek had been using company resources to support Zoya's business operations. Then I called my lawyer to make sure I was staying within legal boundaries. Hayes, you're walking a fine line, he said. What you're doing is legal, but you need to be careful about harassment or interference with their employment. I'm not harassing anyone. I'm just responding to requests for information. Just make sure it stays that way. That evening, I decided to visit Murphy's Tavern, a local bar where Zoya and her crowd used to hang out during their networking events. I wasn't looking for trouble, just curious about the local gossip. The bartender, Mike, recognized me immediately. Hayes, haven't seen you in a while. How's business? Can't complain. How about you? Busy as always. Hey, I heard about you and Zoya. Sorry, man. Thanks, these things happen. I ordered a beer and settled in at the bar. Within an hour, 3 different people had approached me with variations of the same conversation. Everyone had heard about the separation, most had seen the social media drama, and opinions were split. Some people thought I was being vindictive, others thought Zoya had it coming. A few seemed genuinely surprised that she'd left for Derek, since they'd assumed she was smarter than that. Around 9 p.m., Derek himself walked in. He spotted me immediately and made a beeline for the bar. His usual confident swagger was subdued, and he looked like he'd had a rough day. Hayes. Derek. How's work? His jaw tightened. You know exactly how work is. I know you're having some professional difficulties. Sorry to hear that. Cut the act. You sent them that recording. I responded to a request for information about employee conduct. Very different thing. Derek moved closer, lowering his voice. You're trying to destroy my career over a personal dispute. I'm protecting my interests. If that affects your career, maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to pursue a married woman and help her plan to steal half her husband's assets. She wasn't stealing anything. She was entitled to half. According to what? The prenup she signed specifically says otherwise. Derek's face was getting red. That prenup is probably not even enforceable. Feel free to test that theory in court. I'm sure your employer will love the publicity. He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked out without ordering a drink. Mike watched him go and shook his head. That guy's got problems. How so? Word is, his company's not happy with him. Something about mixing business with pleasure. I finished my beer and left a generous tip. Thanks for the conversation, Mike. Anytime, Hayes. Take care of yourself. On the drive home, I reflected on how quickly things had changed. A week ago, Zoya had been riding high on her influencer success. Derek had been the confident finance professional, and I'd been the overlooked husband working quietly in his basement office. Now Zoya's business was collapsing, Derek was facing professional consequences, and I was the one controlling the narrative. Tomorrow, I planned to make some calls to Zoya's remaining sponsors, not to interfere with her contracts, just to make sure they had accurate information about her current situation and capabilities. After all, they deserved to know what they were paying for. Friday morning brought the call I'd been expecting. Derek's voice was strained, lacking his usual arrogance. Hayes, we need to meet, face to face. I'm listening. Pinnacle terminated my employment yesterday. Happy now? I wasn't particularly happy or unhappy about it. Derek's professional problems were a natural consequence of his choices, not my goal. I'm sorry to hear about your job troubles, Derek. What does that have to do with me? You know exactly what it has to do with you. You systematically destroyed my reputation. I provided factual information to people who requested it. If that damaged your reputation, maybe your reputation wasn't as solid as you thought? Meet me tonight. Murphy's Tavern, 8 p.m. We're going to settle this. There's nothing to settle, Derek. You and Zoya made your choice. I made mine. 8 p.m., Hayes. Don't make me come looking for you. He hung up before I could respond. I stared at the phone for a moment, then called Ivan. Hey, you busy tonight around 8? I can be free. What's up? Derek wants to have a conversation at Murphy's. Might be good to have backup nearby. Say no more. I'll be there. I spent the day working on legitimate projects, but my mind kept drifting to the evening ahead. Derek was desperate now, unemployed, and probably feeling the pressure from Zoya to fix their situation. Desperate people made poor decisions. At 7:30, I drove to Murphy's and parked across the street where I could see the entrance. Ivan's truck was already in the lot, and I spotted him at a corner table with a clear view of the bar. Derek arrived exactly at 8 p.m., driving a black BMW that was probably a less he could no longer afford. He walked into the tavern with the stiff posture of someone trying to project confidence he didn't feel. I waited 5 minutes, then followed him inside. Derek had claimed a table in the back corner, away from the main bar area. He'd already ordered a drink and was checking his phone when I approached. Hayes, sit down. I remained standing. You wanted to talk. Talk. Sit down, he repeated, his voice harder. I'm comfortable standing. Derek looked around the bar, probably noticing that several people were watching our interaction. Murphy's wasn't a large place, and we were attracting attention. Fine. Here's the situation. Zoya's business is destroyed, my career is destroyed, and you're acting like you had nothing to do with it. I had everything to do with it. I just didn't start it. You're being vindictive and petty. I'm being thorough. Derek's composure was cracking. What do you want? Money? An apology? What will it take to end this? I want you to understand something, Derek. Zoya didn't leave me for you. She left me for what she thought you represented. Money, status, a lifestyle upgrade. But you're not actually successful, are you? You're just good at looking successful. You don't know anything about me. I know Pinnacle fired you for poor judgment and misuse of company resources. I know your BMW is leased, your condo is rented, and your investment portfolio is mostly leveraged positions that are underwater right now. Derek's face went pale. How do you know that? I'm good with research, Derek. It's what I do for a living. I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot. This is your credit report. Interesting reading. That's illegal. No, it's not. It's all public information if you know where to look. Derek stood up abruptly, knocking his chair backward. You're insane. I'm informed. There's a difference. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. This ends now, Hayes. Whatever game you're playing, it ends now. Or what? Or I make it end. I looked around the bar and noticed that Ivan had moved to a table closer to us. Mike, the bartender, was also watching our conversation with obvious concern. Derek, you're unemployed, nearly broke, and dating a woman whose income I just eliminated. What exactly do you think you can do to me? I can make your life very difficult. You already tried that. It didn't work out well for you. Derek's hands were clenched into fists. For a moment, I thought he might actually swing at me, which would have been the final nail in his coffin. Instead, he grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. This isn't over. Yes, it is. I watched him leave, then walked over to Ivan's table. Everything okay? Ivan asked. Everything's fine. Derek's just having trouble accepting reality. Want me to keep an eye on him? Might not be a bad idea. I drove home feeling oddly empty. The confrontation I'd been expecting had fizzled into nothing more than empty threats from a desperate man. Derek was finished, Zoya's business was destroyed, and I'd accomplished everything I'd set out to do. So why didn't it feel more satisfying? My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Zoya's name on the screen. Hayes, please, we need to talk. We've talked. Derek lost his job. Did you know that? I heard. This has gone too far. You've made your point. Have I? What point do you think I've made? That you can hurt us. That you have power over our lives. Fine, you win. What do you want now? I sat in my car in the darkness, listening to the desperation in her voice. A week ago, she'd been confident and dismissive, ready to walk away with half of everything I'd built. Now she was begging. I want you to understand that actions have consequences, Zoya. You wanted to leave me for Derek and take half of everything. You got Derek. You don't get half of everything. But I have nothing now. No income, no home, no future. You have Derek. Derek can't even pay his own bills. Then maybe you should have done more research before you decided to upgrade. The line was quiet for several seconds. What if I left Derek? What if I came back? Then you'd be a woman who left her husband for another man, and then left that man when he couldn't provide the lifestyle she wanted. Why would I want that woman back? Because we were married for 10 years. Because we built a life together. We built a life together, and you threw it away at 2:17 a.m. on Monday morning. There's no going back from that. I hung up and went inside. The house felt different now. Larger, quieter, but also cleaner somehow. Zoya's clutter was gone, her constant phone calls and social media drama silenced. I could work without interruption, sleep without someone beside me planning their next move up the social ladder. I poured myself a drink and sat in my office, looking at the monitors that displayed my actual work. Real projects for real clients who paid real money for actual value. On Monday, I had 3 new client meetings scheduled. My business was growing, my reputation was solid, and my future was entirely my own. Zoya could keep Derek, assuming he could afford to keep her. They could try to rebuild their lives together, start over somewhere else, learn to live within their actual means instead of the fantasy lifestyle they'd been chasing. Or they could collapse under the weight of their own poor decisions. Either way, it was no longer my problem. I raised my glass to the empty house and smiled. She said she wanted half, I said to the silence. Turns out she gets nothing, and I get the last laugh. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows of my house. My house, in my name, paid for with my work. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new possibilities. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt completely at peace. The game was over. I had won.